So you want to install a new sound system into your vehicle, but the question is, does your vehicle have enough electrical power in order to support this new aftermarket power-hungry equipment? In this video, we're going to start with what the basics are of a vehicle's electrical system. Understanding these basics is going to make it so that we can have a better plan for our upgrade choices in the future. Let's get started. So the first component that makes up the vehicle's electrical system is right here. This is the alternator. The alternator creates voltage in order to power the full electrical system while the vehicle is running. You can see that the engine has a belt and pulley system, and there's actually a pulley on the alternator that spins a shaft within the alternator. Components within the alternator use electromagnetic induction in order to create an alternating current. There's two types of current: alternating current, which is AC, and then there's direct current, which is DC. So in this case, the alternator is making alternating current. The alternator then has a diode circuit which rectifies the alternating current signal into a pulsing direct current signal. So while the vehicle is running, the alternator is actually charging the battery with that direct current, but it's also powering all the different devices within the vehicle. So what's important to understand is that the alternator is the power plant of the vehicle. Batteries and capacitors are just a means of storing that electrical energy. Now, alternators come in different sizes, and they're usually rated by their output, which is in amps. The output rating of the alternator is the most important value to consider, and that's what we're going to be taking a look at in a future video when we talk about when you do and do not need to upgrade the alternator based on what your plans are for your car audio system. Now, the next very important component of the vehicle's electrical system, we already talked about it a little bit already, but that's the battery. In my case, it's a little bit buried away down there, but nevertheless, the battery is the means of storing the electrical energy. Now, what do we need to store electrical energy for when we have an alternator that's always creating that electrical energy while the vehicle is running? Well, in order to actually start the vehicle and get the vehicle running so that the alternator is in fact creating energy, we need the battery. So we know the battery powers the starter to start up the vehicle, but it can also be used to run things while the vehicle is off. So when you're listening to your radio with the vehicle turned off, the alternator isn't providing the power, but the battery is. I know that this is probably a no-brainer for a lot of you guys, but again, I want to consider these little details once we start talking about what's important to upgrade and when. For instance, I know you guys might be wondering, if the battery is only for initially starting up the vehicle and actually powering a few devices when the vehicle is off, why do we see all these really big car audio systems that have a ton of batteries? Well, that's because the alternator can only provide so much current. Once the demand is greater than what the alternator is able to handle, the batteries can be used to, quote unquote, pick up some of the slack. Adding all of these additional batteries really helps the system to be more stable. But there's something important to consider when you're adding more batteries, and that's the fact that whenever the battery's DC voltage is below what the alternator is actually putting out, you're going to be putting a load on the alternator by charging those batteries. This, my friends, is important to consider because when you upgrade the battery without upgrading the alternator first, you might have issues because you're actually putting more strain on the electrical system. Again, guys, with this video, I'm just looking to set the foundation so that we can really understand the best choices in the future. Now, before we move on to the final and one of the most important items that's part of the vehicle's electrical system, I want to take a quick second to thank our sponsor for this video, Audio Control. More and more often nowadays, when we buy a new vehicle, it has a radio that's next to impossible to swap out and replace. What that means is we need to harness the factory audio signal in order to use it for new aftermarket equipment like amplifiers. Audio Control has a wide range of different devices making this possible, from the LC2I, which is an active line output converter that allows us to easily grab that speaker level signal and turn it into RCA outputs, to their new D-4.800 amplifier. This amplifier actually has a digital signal processor that you can control via a computer built in. These guys have been in the business for over 40 years now, and they really know how to make good sound great. So if you want to learn more about them and see some of the different devices and where to purchase, you can check that out down in the video description. The final very important part of the vehicle electrical system is the wiring / vehicle body. Wait, why the vehicle body? Don't worry, we'll get into that. So the wire's job is to act as a distribution network for all the different electrical equipment. So from the alternator to the battery and then to all the devices within the vehicle. Now the reason I mentioned the vehicle body is because of the way the vehicle's electrical system is designed. In order to complete the circuit from positive to negative, the whole vehicle body is actually grounded and connected to the negative battery post. Because the vehicle body is part of that electrical circuit, it's actually something that we need to make sure that we consider when we're upgrading our electrical system to support our new aftermarket equipment. Now this didn't used to be the case, but with some of the new manufacturing techniques that they're using on newer vehicles, it's making it so that the way the body of the vehicle is actually attached to itself and attached to the frame, it isn't always necessarily using welding anymore. Sometimes they're using these high strength epoxies and other things that aren't electrically conductive. Not every spot on the vehicle is necessarily a good ground. So there's some certain wires in the vehicle that we're actually going to talk about making upgrades on, and there's also some different considerations that we need to take into account when we're adding our main power wires for the amplifier or other devices. The features for wiring that we'll want to pay attention to are the wiring gauge, or how thick the wire actually is. The thicker that a wire is, the more current it can safely handle and the less resistance that it has. But guys, size is not the only thing that matters here. You also need to consider the materials that the wire is made of. So now that we have a good foundation and understanding of what's what in the vehicle electrical system, we can better plan out our upgrades for that system. That's coming up in a future video. I've actually been working on writing the script for that video and it was getting quite long. That's why I took this information and pulled it out and I made this first basic introduction video so that we could all be on the same page. So since that video isn't done quite yet, I wanted to ask you guys, we have things like batteries, capacitors, alternators, and wiring. What do you guys think is the best upgrade path? What do you think should be done first? Join in on the conversation and let's talk down in the comments. If you're new here and you don't want to miss that video, I would love to have you as a subscriber, and you can check out some of the other videos that I've made in the past here on screen. A special thanks goes out to Audio Control, along with John, Brian, Ali, Steven, Jerry, EJ, Emmanuel, Truman, James, and Colin, and the rest of the Patreon support team. A big thanks to all those guys for helping crowdfund the making of these videos. As always, my dudes, I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching.